Hey guys, today we're going to see how we can scrape New York Times articles using beautiful soup and Python, of course. And so we're going to make a very quick one, and it's not going to be perfect, but it'll get you to actual, real, practical results and get you through a bunch of understanding about beautiful soup, how to use it, how to use the request module to request data, use that, and then use beautiful soup to scrape it using CSS selectors, and how to overcome some of the challenges, and how to make sure that the scraping operation scales, right? So one is the scraper doesn't break, the other is the crawler doesn't break. So how are we going to do that? So we're going to cover all of that very quickly in this imperfect video. Okay. So the first thing we need for that is we're going to start a new window. We're going to basically start off with beautiful soup, just like so. And there you go. These are the two things that we need. Beautiful soup and request. Request will get you the URL. It will fetch the URL, give you the data, and then beautiful soup can then go about scraping the data in very interesting ways. So we're going to do that. Let's identify what it is that we're going to scrape. We're going to scrape the New York Times. So YT, go to New York Times, and there's a bunch of stuff over here. Okay, so I'm going to, because this all spread out a little bit, I'm going to target this first as a starting point, which is the opinion pieces. And so I'm going to look at, let's try and look at how to scrape these. Okay, so to start off, we need to first of all scrape that successfully, right? To do that, we can use the request module. The way to call a URL properly will be to do something like this: request.get. This is the format URL, and then you can pass optionally headers. Okay. Headers are going to be important for us, so we're going to pass it with headers equals header, whatever. Right. So it's an array that we're going to pass. So here we're going to use one particular header to make sure that we get a result from New York Times, because New York Times, I have a feeling, will, and most sites will expect a browser to call, and they want to know that you are a browser. So you have to pretend to be a browser. Unless you do that, they are not going to return back any results for any bot. Um, so what we'll do is we will send the user agent string as a header. So the way to do it is to pretend to be a browser by sending user agent as a string, just like so, and then pass it here. So user agent string is nothing but a browser identifier. It identifies what browser you are, what version of it you are, what operating system you're on, what family of browser it is. So based on that, websites actually can tailor their content and makes the experience better. That's how it was born. But now, web servers obviously use that to detect bots and stuff like that. So we're going to go get one. So if you just Google, you'll get a bunch of user agent strings, list of user agent strings. You'll get one in a website like this. So here I'm going to use the Mac OS based Safari browser for now. You can even pretend to be a, what do you call, you can even pretend to be a iPad if you want to, but then I think it'll change HTML here, and we'll find it difficult then to scrape it. So I'm going to keep it to this, and then load it like that. And then, so we are passing the headers, and then let's try and fetch the results and actually print them. Right? So print the response that we get. Our response is the one that we're going to get from this. So we're going to post, we're going to use the response object, and the response object will have content as a piece, otherwise it will not give us anything. So I'm going to do that and save this. Let's say I want to save this as beautiful soup slash underscore NYT. A good name for it. So I'm already on that folder, so I'm going to run it. Python Beautiful soup underscore NYT dot py. See what happens. Oh, I see what this is. I just ran the wrong Python installation. I have multiple, so I'm going to use the Python 3 installation, and URL is not defined, of course. So define the URL variable. So URL equals get the URL of New York Times. There it is. Then let's run it. And we have to run this. It should give us some gibberish by now because all the HTML will be printed over here just as a test so that we can go forward peacefully. Right? Meanwhile, while that is happening, I'm going to assume some success here. And let's load up beautiful soup and convert this data. So the data we're getting, we're going to make soup process that data. And the way to process that data is to do response.content. So the raw content then will be converted into a LXML format. We're going to tell that to beautiful soup and pass it to a variable called soup. So what's happening here is the raw data now is parsed and is ready to go. Right, ready to be queried, ready to be selected on, all sorts of things. So we'll in a moment look at all that. So this is the initialization of that. Oh, again, URL is not defined. URL is defined. So I think there was a problem in saving. A failed to establish connection. This happens, I think it's just because my connection speeds, guys. It's pretty bad. Just waiting on the connection here. And I'm also wondering what will happen if it breaks. I have to I guess you can just forward this whole thing on YouTube. I'm just going to change my network here for a second. Let's hope this one will work. Yes, finally, the basic operation of the internet has succeeded. All right, so now we are getting that. Now let's quickly get into getting the soup operations going, which is the web scraping operations. So if I were to do that, I'll open the website here. Let's look at this whole thing about John Bolton. Inspect, and opening the Chrome Inspector is a godsend for this. Okay, so just to have fun, let's just get this part. Okay, how about we just get this part and see what this, if we can use the, okay, so what I mean here is if you look at the class here, John Bolton gets the large laugh. It is a H2, but it has this weird class name here. Okay, let's just use a soup selector, the CSS selector, to get this one piece of data, just to prove to ourselves, just to learn how this whole thing works. Let's just get comfortable. Okay, so that's the class name. I'm just taking the class name over here. So what we do is we then say soup.select. Okay, and here you can call the selector, like if you learned jQuery, if you know jQuery, this is super easy for you. This is the same as jQuery. In fact, you can just, if you want an element with a particular ID, you can just call that by that ID, element ID, you know, or if you want an element with a particular class, you can call it by class name over here. So in this case, we're going to do that. You know, we take the class name, this one, which we just copied from there, and then we paste it over here. Okay. So now what happens is soup.select and class name returns an array. Okay, because you will see that there are lots of articles. So all of those article headlines will be returned, not just that one article headline. So what we need to do is print the first item of that. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to assume the array. And Not just that, I'm going to print and I'm going to pull the text out of it. We don't need all the HTML. We'll take that out and do a print command on top of it. This should give us one article, the first article it notices. Okay, I'm going to print this, I'll click print out. We don't need the entire content. There you go. Hopefully my connection will hold up. There you go. Listen to the daily. That's one of the articles definitely there on the New York Times. But this is just a test. Let's get into actually now processing this. Okay, so I'm going to kill this. This gives you an understanding of how we are doing the rest of it. So that's an important understanding, but we're not going to use it. It's not really that useful. So what we're trying to now get is some sort of wrapper inside which all of these rests. All right. So that's what we're going to try and get. So let's see. I think this is it. So look at this this particular class. It seems to always be resting inside of a class like this. So even if I go here, if you look at this, here there's something called asset wrapper. That's a good name. It hints at it being a wrapper. The rest of it is CSS something something. We don't make any sense. This is the only thing that makes any sense to me right now. So I'm going to just take that, okay? And what I'll do is I'll use that as an umbrella to query everything else within it. Okay, so that we don't keep falling outside of that block. So we don't do any more queries in a very generic sense anymore. Okay, every other query from now on will be inside one asset wrapper, right? And so that at least the data then is not spread out. This is the proper way of scraping. Okay, it also allows us to sort of traverse the XML now if we need to, because some of the class names may not be meaningful and they might change to prevent scraping. All right. So what happens then is, but the relationship between the wrapper and the elements inside that wrapper remains the same. Right. So we can literally say, this is the house in which I want the first child, I want the second child, and I want the third table or whatever, right? So we can say like that once we identify one house and query only within that particular space. So what we'll do now is this will return an array of all these wrappers. So I'm just going to do for each of this. So right, for each command for this would be something like for item in or items in. So we're going to soup it, soup dot select, and then I'm going to call and then use, so anything with asset wrapper, and that's your for each. Okay, so now I'm going to do all I have to do now is identify things within it. So before that, I'm going to just put a print of this for item, and sorry, not items, item, and I'm going to do an item print to see if it gives me within that scope. It should work, and then we can proceed from there. There you go. Each of those, I think, is containing something Trump's digital advantage. I can see from here, George Bolton. You can see these are all little divisions which has news in them. So that's fine. So now let's remove this. And now we are going to continue. And let's try and get maybe the headline. Let's see if we can get the headline. So if you look at the headline here, it's a H2 class. And if you notice, there is no other sort of H2 class, because that's the headline class, typically H1 or H2 anyway. So that's almost like a reserved one. So here at this point, I don't like to use the class names though, right? So because they are gibberish. Look at that, and that can be changed. I think it's coming from an algorithm. It's not human for human consumption, and definitely not bot consumption. But the H2 remains the same. So if I just can say inside any wrapper, if you can just give me the H2 of that wrapper, I think we are in, right? So all I got to do is get to the H2 or inside of it. So how am I going to do that is, first of all, I'll open up the item and then select inside the item. In fact, in this case, the select command would work. Select command is to select a particular class and those kind of queries. So what we can do is use the beautiful soup as a find command. And inside the find command, we can look to find the H2 tag. All right. And let's see, and then we have to convert that to text. We don't need that, I think, but we will do that anyway. So, and then I will print this. This should be the headline. This should give me the headlines now. So let's have a look. This works. What's that? There you go. We did it. Look at that. Listen to the daily, the book review, blah, 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 blah. Everything is here. John Bortle, everything is here. Okay, so we got all the headlines. So now, for each of those, we need the relevant um, links and summaries. So let's go back here and see other meaningful ways to get that. So for example, can I get the summary of this? So let's find out where the summary resides. I think it resides in one of this. Have a look. Left and right agree. Yes, this one. Okay, so this is a P class right below the H class. There's a P class. So all I got to do is query for the P class. I think, and I'll get the, and then I'll get the headline, the summary. Okay, the paragraph tag, not class. Why do I keep saying class? It's tag, P tag. Not get text. What's happening here? I did a mistake somewhere. Yeah, I think it's fine. Oh, I know. We put all of this in a try class. Sometimes what happens is there might be other asset wrappers that we run through, which may not have exactly this. Sometimes it's only the headline, right? So I'm not going to then get tripped up by all of this. So I'm just going to make, and then I'm not going to raise that exception. I'm just going to leave it, and we can't leave the thing there, and I'm going to hack that a little bit by little trickery there. Okay, so don't mind me. So let's run this again. There you go. So if you see here, it sort of has the headline as well as the let's look at the Bolton one. John Bolton gets the last laugh. He's the president's bane and impeachment star. All right. So that is the, if you look at the thing here, is the president's bane and impeachment star. So that gives you the summary as well. Okay, so it's printing both of those results here, and without printing the errors when the wrapper goes off the target. All right. And so now let's see if we can get. I'm just going to copy it because I'm expecting the rest to repeat the same order. Let's see if we can get the link itself. All right. So I'm going to see where the link is. The link is inside a href. So all you got to do is find the a tag. So I would say put an a tag here, but then we don't want the text of it. So what we do is remove the text, and we are going to get the href part of it. All right, like an associate array it creates. So you just create, you take that and print that out. That should give you the link to that particular article. There you go. Actually, if this is confusing to you, one of the things I can do is just print out a separator here. Okay, so let me just print a separator because it all looks the same. There you go. Let's print a big separator like that. Print. And then cancel this. Okay. Oops. Alright, let it run. Sorry about that. There you go. Now run it again. There you go. So you got your coronavirus live updates, you got the summary, and you got the relative URL. So all you got to do is just add newyorktimes.com to this relative URL, and you got your whole URL. Right. So from now, you got all the data. You can continue to get more data if there is date and all that. It's pretty easy from here. And you can now use this data and put it in a CSV file, or just put it in an array and pass it to another function to do whatever with it. Put it in a database, do however else you do. That's how you scale this. The other word of caution here is if you're doing this at a production, in as simple as literally 30 lines, not even that many, we're able to scrape it. But to scale it means quite a lot of other things, right? So one of the things you will see that New York Times eventually, right now it's fine, but if you keep querying them in a regular and frequent manner, let's say you do it every day, and you do writers, you do all these people every day, you will get blocked eventually because the IP is going to be the same, even if you are pretending the user agent string is this, and even if you rotate them over particular different versions of browser so it doesn't look like you are the same person, you will still get blocked because your IP gives it away, and you can only change IP so many times by restarting the routers or trying from different machines. So if you really want to scale to thousands and thousands and on an everyday basis, which is a one-off thing with a few hundred, I think this code is fine. You can just take this and run with it and just optimize it a little bit more. But otherwise, you will need a rotating proxy service, right? So I happen to have one. I feel odd about actually pitching this, but why not, right? Because this makes a complete web scraping package. Really, without that, I don't know how you're going to scale it, right? So what you need is we route your request. So instead of New York Times, you pass calling New York Times directly. You're going to call this endpoint really, just like so, and pass New York Times itself as a URL as if that was a variable to us, and we will fetch it on behalf of you using millions of proxies, and you'll never almost ever hit the same proxy twice. So New York Times really has no way of knowing. And then we also rotate user agent strings. We handle all sorts of other headers, cookies, sessions if you need, captchas if they throw out one. All of this and automatic retries. You saw that the connection went up and down. All of that is solved because we do that behind the scenes. All you see is the end result, right? And you can concurrently hit us up to 10 concurrencies even just in the free model, which gives you 1,000 API calls a month. So it's enough, more than enough to test it out and scale and set up your whole web scraping environment. We don't even need a credit card for it. If you sign up, you'll get your API key, and that's the end of it. After that, you can just copy this, replace the API key, and put it in the place of New York Times over here, and you're done. Nothing else you need to do, and you get the power of a million proxies, power of never getting IP blocked, never getting really a bad return. All the time, you will get what you expect, and then your web scraping that can really scale very high. So I feel odd about pitching it. Anyway, there's a free thing. You can go, please take it. If this was not something that you were interested in, I'm sorry about that. You can just take this code, and I hope that you enjoyed it. And this should be enough in most cases. Only for advanced users do you need a rotating proxy. And it's always good to know that this exists, I feel. So thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you.